The last time I visited my mother was about 3 years ago, and it was the first time that I allowed my kids to visit her. My mother died in 2006 from a lethal combination of alcohol and pain medication related to depression. The official cause of her death was multiple organ failure and brain swelling. But as far as I'm concerned, the cause of my mother's death will always be multiple broken hearts from narcissistic abuse. When my dad left, I was only 4 years old. I didn't know anything about narcissism or pain or depression. I had no concept of what my mother was going through after my dad left. All I had was the ability to observe some very strange, erratic behavior from my mother. Oftentimes it was downright terrifying. For example, there was one instance where my mother got myself, my brother, into the car, and we drove up to my aunt's house, her sister, who lived about a mile away. When we got there and she got to the front door, suddenly my mom and my aunt broke out in a fight. They were yelling and screaming at each other, and I can remember looking up at my mother, and I would watch her sway back and forth during the argument and fall up against the wall without anybody touching her. It was scary. My aunt was screaming, "Dina, you're drunk. Dina, you need help." I want you to hang on to that because I heard that a lot growing up. "You need help, Dina." They were yelling back and forth. My aunt tried to get me and my baby brother into the house. My mom fought her, yanked us out of the house. My aunt was able to wrestle the keys away from her. And so we started walking a mile back home on a dirt road, much like this one right here. There was dirt on one side, cement on the other. And what was scary about this walk back home is that my mother kept falling face first into the dirt, onto the cement, and I was too young to be able to have the strength to pick her up. There was a truck, an old beat up red Chevy truck that pulled up on the road alongside of us. Some guy looked through the window and said, "Hey, y'all need a ride?" My mother yelled some obscenities and the truck drove off. It's just terrifying. Eventually, while we were walking home, my grandparents pulled up, yelled at my mother, "Get in the car." And on the way driving us home, I remember my grandparents just yelling at my mother saying, "Dina, you need help. You're drunk. You need help." And here's the thing. This is why I'm sharing this story. Because it wasn't that my mother wasn't aware that she needed help. It's that my mother wasn't getting the help that she needed. Because the reality is that around this time, my mother was in and out of a lot of help. I know because I was dragged along. We were in and out of different counselors' offices, in and out of psychologists' offices, in and out of therapists, in and out of different churches. But the problem persisted. Her drinking didn't change. And this is what we have to question. This is what I'm talking to you about. Why is that? Why was my mother in and out of counselors' offices, in and out of therapists' offices, in and out of psychologists, in and out of going to church, yet she wasn't getting any help? Let's keep in mind that in the early 80s, the word narcissism wasn't used the way it is today. People weren't talking about it. As a matter of fact, there was very little effort put into externalizing abuse and abusive personalities in this world. I believe, and I think it's something we still struggle with, I really believe that when somebody goes for counseling or for therapy or into a psychologist's office, the unspoken assumption is that that person is the one that's the issue. That person is the one that needs to be fixed. If you think about it in that way, it's like somebody who goes for counseling because they're trying to process an abusive world. They're punished for going to counseling. They're punished in a way by the counselors, by the therapists. And I believe that was my mom. And I believe this is why she turned to alcohol, because she felt in these counseling sessions, in these therapy sessions, she felt judged, observed. She felt looked at like, what is your problem? How do we help you cope? Instead of helping her understand and process and externalize the abusive reality of the world that we live in. This is important. And this is why I'm here talking with you. Because I believe many of you have also run into this issue where counselors, therapists, psychologists have failed to help you externalize the reality of the abusive nature of other people, whether it's your family members, whether it's coworkers, whether it's your husband, whether it's your wife. And instead, you've been observed as though you're the one who needs better coping skills. Not that you need to get away, not that you need to change what it is you're looking for, not that you need to change your job, you need to change the type of people you associate with. It's no. You need help coping. This is important because my mother did get remarried. She drank all the way up until she got remarried. And her second husband was just as abusive, if not more, than my father. I'm not going to get into all the abuses of that relationship and how toxic it was, but let me just tell you that it was 10 years too long, and the marriage lasted 10 years. My mother's drinking subdued a little bit in that marriage because she had another challenge to preoccupy herself with. But when that marriage ended, my mother was back in therapy, back in the counselor's offices, back dealing with psychologists and churches. She was broken and hurting because she still never got adequate help from when my dad left. And again, the question is why? Why was she seeing counselors and therapists and psychologists but getting no help? Why was she going to churches, talking to pastors, but getting no help? The best she got was eventually medications that actually turned her alcoholism into a monstrous, erratic, terrifying thing that ruined the rest of her life.
I believe that today we are opening up more to the reality of evil in this world. This is the time for you to be able to get the help that you need. For those of you who have dealt with narcissists within your own family, within your own marriages, you don't have to stay there and take on the abuse. Not only take on the abuse, but take on this idea that there's something wrong with you and maybe you need to have medication to cope with it. We live in a world now where you can come forward and people can tell you, no, that relationship is toxic. And the person you're with, or the family members you're dealing with, your mom, your dad, they're abusive. And you don't have to have anything to do with them. There is peace available for you. It doesn't have to end with you just going to counselors and therapists who are going to observe you and help you to cope. When we can get you out. Listen, I'm here to support you. Down in the description box, you'll find access for one-on-one appointments with me. In addition to that, brand new life coaching program that's aimed at helping you on a daily basis to heal and to understand. Get down there and get registered for the class. We are talking about depression as a result of narcissistic abuse. And I'll be back with more videos for you right here on the Royal We. Before I leave, check this video out right here. This video is about my father's last words before dying, my narcissistic father's last words before dying. And it's eye-opening what he says. I'll be back with more videos for you right here on The Royal We.